On this episode of Development STL, we will talk about the revitalization of the fashion industry in St. Louis, the announcement of a new company coming to the city, and the excitement surrounding it. Break out your needles and threads, lay out your patterns, and start up those sewing machines. This is Development STL. Welcome to Development STL. I am your host, John Parker. St. Louis has a rich history in the fashion industry. From the late 19th century until the end of World War II, the city was second only to New York in terms of garment manufacturing. Dubbed Shoe Street, USA, Washington Avenue once claimed more shoe manufacturers than any other street in the world. From the mid-1930s through the 1950s, St. Louis was a thriving epicenter of fashion and manufacturing, second only to Manhattan. St. Louis had a complete fashion ecosystem that encompassed everything from buttons and thread to gloves, outerwear, ladies' garments, and men's clothing. At the close of World War II and through the late 1950s, manufacturing took a hit across the United States as production operations moved out of the country to areas where labor was much cheaper. Combined with the advent of new technology, foreign imports, and the introduction of superstores with lower prices, the once flourishing fashion industry in St. Louis began to grind slowly to a halt. But with the development of organizations like the St. Louis Fashion Fund, the fashion industry is re-emerging in our city. And one company has recently found it very attractive. Joining me today is John Lewis, one of the creators of Evolution St. Louis. Welcome, man. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Well, tell me about, you are a St. Louis native. You grew up in the retail thing. Your first job was in retail.
Sure.
Tell me what you know about the history of fashion in St. Louis.
Well, it's interesting. It's been around for a long time. As well, there's a great heritage and a narrative here. I first moved here, in 1984 to work for Famous Bar.
Okay.
And interestingly enough, when I moved back last September, it's good to be back, I moved a block from my old apartment.
Okay.
Down in Soulard, so I've made the full circle around. But, over the last years, we still always, St. Louis has always been an important ecosystem and mecca for fashion. When May Company was here and then Macy's was here, we'd always make buying trips here and business development trips from New York or LA, wherever I was based. And so I'd been coming to St. Louis for a long time. And when we started our project, our manufacturing project, and approached by Susan Sherman at the St. Louis Fashion Fund to come take a visit in St. Louis, it was a natural invitation and reason to come, just because we knew the city would be receptive.
When you say the May Company, tell them who it was, because people will hear the May Company, but they don't connect it with what the store was.
Sure. So Famous Bar was a division of May Company
way back
when.
That goes back a ways.
Right. And the May Company corporate, which is in charge of a bunch of different divisions, Hecht and Filene's and a bunch of other regional chains, the corporate headquarters were based here as well too. Okay. So it was
okay.
And it's funny because when I graduated from college, I thought, oh, fashion's going to be exciting and all this other fun stuff, and I ended up coming to St. Louis and unpacking boxes in the middle of the night for a 24-hour
Well, when
sale
you thought
at Famous
fashion,
Bar.
you thought New York City fashion.
Exactly, right? So, because I was going to go work at Procter & Gamble or Xerox or something like that. But anyways, it's been a good industry, and St. Louis has always been it's great to see it resurrect.
Well, with Washington Avenue and the history of Washington Avenue being the garment district. Sure. Tell me what your feelings are of maybe bringing the company back here a little bit. What it could possibly do to that region of the city that has some historical, some connection to the fashion industry.
Sure. Well, I think, the city itself, or the street itself, is really designed for fashion. I mean, it has this great old building and wonderful architecture and great real estate. So, I mean, that lends itself to it as well, too. I think the initiatives of downtown St. Louis and the SLDC to reestablish the garment district makes it kind of like a beacon or a home to, new brands and new businesses coming. I think for us, one of the important pieces was having the St. Louis Fashion Fund here, because I think, we really need three pillars to create an ecosystem. You need the whole design incubator and accelerator program, which the St. Louis Fashion Fund is. It's probably one of the best in the country, and I've seen almost all of them. And you need manufacturing, which we represent and are there. And then I think you need venture capital, so to invest in brands and bring businesses here. So all those three things have to work, and I think we're well on our way to establish the first two legs of a three-legged stool, if you will.
Okay.
And I think the brands that come and the business that will follow will just generate a whole other interest here. And I think what's interesting about St. Louis is that from the investor community, from the city to even the development community, they understand the real estate development. They understand our sector and our industry, so they kind of get it, right? So I think that's going to be, it's when other cities and other states try to establish a garment center, whether it be, Third Ward in Milwaukee or Detroit or whatever the case may be, it's hard because it's really not in their DNA.
Now, tell the viewers that how you guys got here, because you actually weren't supposed to be here.
No, not at all. Not at all, actually. Yeah, we were supposed to be. We started this project about 2.5 years ago in New York.
Okay.
Thinking that we were going to create, go back to the garment district there and have manufacturing in Manhattan or in Brooklyn, and explored that. It was really just too difficult with the price of real estate. Plus, you had a city, Manhattan itself, that's really kind of evolving into tech, Wall Street, law firms. It doesn't really kind of, the idea of the garment district in New York is somewhat of a myth now, because it's really a design and marketing center.
And it's expensive.
And it's expensive. At $50, $60 a square foot, it's hard to do anything.
Wow.
And even if you pay somebody $50,000, $60,000 a year to work there, that basically buys you a Starbucks and a bagel, right? So it doesn't really go that far, right? So, I think we quickly determined that New York was not going to be the place to go. So we looked at the Carolinas, which in the past had been the traditional manufacturing place, where the mills and things were, but it really didn't lend itself to this type of manufacturing. And this is, we'll go into this in a minute, but it's high-tech manufacturing. It really lends itself more to what, the industrial Midwest had to offer. Right.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, we were like the 11th hour, because you were on your way to Detroit.
Yeah, we were. I'm originally from Michigan,
okay.
So I knew a lot of people there and I had a lot of connections. So Michigan seemed like a natural transition. And there is an emerging
cold
fashion. Yeah, it's cold. Let me tell you. Let me tell you that.
I live there.
Yeah, right. We've had those U of M conversations, right? So, but it's it's cold. But I think that they're trying really hard, and I think they'll make great gains in creating an ecosystem there. But we were pretty far down the road. We were looking at real estate, looking at a lease and all that other fun stuff, and then we met Susan.
Yeah. If you guys don't know who we're talking about Susan Sherman, who is with the St. Louis Fashion Fund. And Susan's a talker now.
She is.
I mean, she is a salesperson without question.
Right. So when she called, and she actually called my partner, John Almuccia, who was based in New York at the time, said, I need to have a cocktail with you. Come over and have a drink with me. Don't sign anything for Detroit. I want to talk to you first, So that was about 1.5 years ago in November. So
okay.
Yeah, 2 weeks later, we were in St. Louis and making a presentation to the SLDC, the investor community, the city, all the different entities. We thought we were just going to come in and have a conversation. It was a presentation, our conversation with like 30 people. And we really looked at, got immediate reaction and warm welcome from the city, and with talking about new market tax credits and all those types of incentives. And just really, I think within a month, we said, we have to explore this. We have to make this work.
And you found a great building.
Found a great building, It's in a Grand Center. Okay. And it was the old SLDC incubator.
Yes, right? One of the first incubators before pre-T-Rex.
Yeah, before incubators were incubators, right? So,
right.
It was interesting. We first saw the building. We walked in, and Ken Kransberg is obviously the kind of.
Oh, Ken's a great guy.
Yeah, he's the mentor of Grand Center.
He's the man, Ken, right? Is like he's the Oz of Grand Center.
Absolutely, man behind the curtain. So, he said, you got to take a look at this building. And we walked in, and there were so many windows and doors and offices.
Oh, little offices.
It was
sure.
hard to like really visualize it, but you know, the more we looked at it, we just kind of ripped it back out to its guts. It was a manufacturing building at one time. So now we could have built a better building.
Right.
You know, and our factory has always been, you know, capable of being green. I mean, we've always had our factory go next to a school, a hospital, a playground, whatever the case may be, and that's exactly where we are. We're across from, you know, 2 schools next to a Montessori training, regional training center. We're down the street from the Pulitzer, you know, Museum of Modern Art, the Fox Theater. You know, we're right in the middle of the hub of the city.
Well, we're going to talk more about this after the break, but this
Sure.
is a huge deal for the city, without question, for the garment district. And when we come back, we're going to talk more with John Lewis and the potential impact on the revitalization of the fashion industry in St. Louis, and talk more about Evolution St. Louis, the company. This is going to be a big thing for the city. Folks, this is Development STL on STL TV. I am your host, John Parker. We'll be right back.
There's so many reasons to love St. Louis, you can't pick just one.
What I love about St. Louis is the 79 unique neighborhoods and 108 beautiful city parks, including Forest Park, which is actually larger than Central Park in New York, and the gorgeous Tower Grove Park right here.
And there's always something new to experience, no matter the time of day or the season. So come and experience St. Louis. Visitors and residents love the St. Louis Zoo because it's free. There's a train, a carousel, opportunities to make new friends, and plenty of fun learning experiences with the animals 363 days a year. So come and experience St. Louis.
Welcome back to Development STL. I am your host, John Parker. We're going to continue our conversation with John Lewis of Evolution St. Louis, and I want you to tell me more of the impact that you see the company itself. Tell me about the company and
Sure.
the machinery and the innovation that this is going to bring not only to the fashion industry of the world and of the United States, but what the impact is going to be on St. Louis.
Sure. So the basic premise of Evolution St. Louis is high-tech knitting.
Right.
So if you can imagine 3D printing, this is like 3D knitting. I tend to call it Willy Wonka. It goes in yarn in one end and comes out a sweater at the other. So the products we'll be making are things like sweaters, knit dresses, hats, scarves, gloves, but also things like shoe uppers from, you see that Nike and Under Armour and Adidas, all that kind of knitted material, the uppers on those shoes. These machines make those. Medical equipment,
Really?
car seats, all kinds of things for the automotive industry. So it really can knit a plethora of different products and categories. So not just fashion, but fashion in and of itself is its heart and core.
Okay.
Right? So when you think about the scale, you talk about a $2.5 trillion apparel business where roughly 35% of any brand or line is a knit of some sort. So the addressable market here is massive. So when we talk about opening our 32,000 square foot facility in Grand Center, which can hold up to 90 machines, which is great. The big factories in China and Asia might have 500 machines or 1,000 machines. So this is really just the start. We aim to create an industry sector here for high-tech knitting in St. Louis. So it's not just, right now, like I said, 32,000 square feet, 90 machines, up to 90 machines, 55 to 60 employees. We're talking 500 machines and 400 employees and multiple buildings around the city.
Now, with technology just blowing up right here in St. Louis with the startup companies that are in TRX and other incubators around the St. Louis area, from a technology standpoint, is this new technology?
No, it's not necessarily new. It's proven technology. These machines are already in Asia and already operating in Europe as well, too.
Okay.
But even in the last 2 to 3 years, they've advanced so much in their capabilities where labor has become such a smaller part of the cost of goods that getting cheap labor isn't really relevant anymore. And the software development, again, the design process is all done, online as well too, or digitally. So there's no more cutting out samples.
Yeah, there's no more the laying out the patterns and hand sewing things, and there's nobody walking around the room with scissors.
Yeah, or tape measures around their neck or anything like that. I mean, our designers are actually, it's going to be looking more like a trading floor with 2 big screens and sitting there and coding all these designs. But we can sample three-dimensionally. We can look at designs three-dimensionally. So it's really the marriage of technology and fashion coming together, which again makes St. Louis, it has a history in both now, with everything that's happening in Cortex and T-Rex, but also, the heritage of the fashion industry. It's a nice blend of those two pieces coming together, and that's really what brings the manufacturing back. I will say there's a lot of conversation about reshoring manufacturing. And John Almuccio, again, my partner on this project, we don't like to talk about that. We're reshoring the revenue and the production capacity, but the jobs we don't want their jobs. We want to make the factory of the future. Our factory is going to be, our technicians are going to be not working on industrial, smelt lines or soldering lines. They're going to be wearing a lab coat and working off a tablet, managing, high-tech knitting machines. We're not going to employ cafeterias. We're going to have lounges and a coffee bar. It's really built for, what manufacturing looks like going forward.
This is manufacturing to Starbucks.
I know, right? So it's kind of like, I think I want to be a technician, right? So we're designing it out. So, I think that's kind of we want it to be a beacon or an example of what manufacturing looks like going forward, regardless of the category. But because the knitting, capability of the machines and the high-tech nature of it really means that we can be cost competitive with overseas production, especially when you factor in things like lead times and being close to the market and inventory control, transparency on intellectual property.
Sure.
And now with all the tariff conversation, it just makes it even more relevant.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that because anytime a new company comes to a city, and specifically anytime a new company comes to St. Louis, people want to talk about the economic impact, not only what it's going to have on the St. Louis community, but what it could potentially have on the United States in relevance to what we do here. So talk a little bit about that.
Right, so for St. Louis specifically, and we're going to start within the first 3 years, we'll create 53 jobs. These are net new jobs. They're not coming out of any other industry. They're not coming out of any other kind of business. We're just creating absolute new incremental jobs to the city, right? But like I said before, that's just the test. The first 53 people we will hire will be the trainers and the managers and the supervisors for the next 50 and 100 beyond that.
Okay.
So it's also a conversation about bringing in the educational community as well too.
Sure.
Work with Rankin Tech and St. Louis Community College, as well as WashU and other universities around the country to bring that technical expertise to St. Louis. So we're not only training and developing the people here, but we're also bringing new talent to the city as well. So there's and so the exponential effect of that, their ability to help train people and create new jobs beyond that is exciting as well for St. Louis. I think then you also have what we like to call the 20-minute effect, in that our factory, because it can go into any urban setting, really can you can be in you can build 20-minute communities where you can live, eat, work, play, all within a 20-minute walk or bike ride, right? So manufacturing that can fit into that, kind of ecosystem, that kind of concept, can be true economic development because you can transform neighborhoods at a time. So the people that are going to be working at our facility in Grand Center are the same people that are going to spill out at lunch hour and go to the cafes and the coffee shops or run down the street to the new deli and the new restaurants. So the ripple effect of job creation becomes, exponential, right?
And landing this thing in Grand Center, one of the fastest growing areas in the St. Louis area, was not a bad move here. I mean,
no, definitely,
you got a great facility in that area, and the economic impact just to all the small businesses around there has got to be huge.
Absolutely, and then you start to factor in third, party supply chain as far as distribution and the other pieces of supply chain like packing and shipping materials. And you start to really kind of get this kind of this rolling ripple effect that's really positive. And I think, when we look at expansion within St. Louis, it's not only within Grand Center, for us, and, I spent 25 years in New York, right? So coming back to St. Louis, it's sometimes hard for me to grasp the concept between the Garment District versus Grand Center versus, north of Del Mar, south, whatever. It's all 15 minutes away to me, right?
Right.
So when we look at the capability of what it means for St. Louis, downtown, all the surrounding areas, there's a lot of great areas and places where we can expand.
Now, from that, and with that building, you have, I mean, I've been in the building.
Sure.
You've got loading docks, you've got storage space.
Right.
I mean, that building, talk just a little bit about just the impact and the capabilities of the facility for Evolution.
Right.
What it's going to do for you guys.
Right. So when we first looked at the building, like I said, it was tough to kind of visualize what it looked like. But once we kind of cleared all the walls out, it really became, we couldn't have built a better facility. So our initial business plan was to have 32 machines and be in this kind of facility. Because it's so efficient and laid out so perfect for us, we have the capability to put, like I said, 90 machines in there. So we could triple our pro forma just in the space we're in.
Wow.
Which is pretty exciting.
Well,
right?
yeah. I mean, what are you now? You want to be a $500 million.
Yeah,
company.
exactly.
Okay.
We didn't move here to. I love St. Louis, but I had to move here to run a small kind of manufacturing plant. We wanted to create a $500 million industry sector, and that's what we want to run. So
when you say that, give me give me an idea, a timeline of what you're looking at to grow from where you are to get to that level.
No, it's a great question. We'll be in our facility, kind of have machines delivered, ready to go by the end of August of this year. And so we'll do our test runs and kind of our sampling, but we'll be producing by the end of this year, hopefully October, November, December.
Wow.
So we've been multitasking a little bit, trying to get all our customers in place. And I will say our machine suppliers of Stoll USA, who are providing all the machines, they're providing training, their people to help us train. They're sending their people to St. Louis to work on our factory. Their customer base, they're global companies, so they're bringing their total global resources to this facility because it will be one of its kind, the only kind in the United States. So they recognize that this is a huge deal. So the first 30, we have options on 300 additional machines right now. So we plan just within 5 years to bring in roughly 300 machines.
Now, from an ordering standpoint, will everything be done obviously online? And do you have any pre-orders on things already?
Sure, we're working with customers now.
Already?
Yeah,
we don't have machines here. Yeah, we have orders ready to go.
We have no machines, and we didn't even announce till last week. But we already worked with customers because Stoll has a facility in New York.
Okay.
So where they do a lot of development, and it's really a demonstration facility, but they partner with us to start working with customers on doing some sampling and different concepts, and they're referring customers to us daily. So it's
this thing's off and running.
Yeah, we're kind of up and running. We're not waiting for anything. It's not one of those build it, they will come. This isn't Field of Dreams. This is actually very real. And all the cylinders are in place, or pieces are in place to kind of get this thing moving quick.
Well, wow.
Yeah.
Well, clearly, as you can see, the fashion industry is alive and well in St. Louis. And with organizations like the St. Louis Fashion Fund and Evolution St. Louis coming to town, fashion has a bright future here, clearly. And I just want to say thanks for bringing this company to town.
Sure, our pleasure.
And thank you for having the belief in our city and wanting to come back home. How about that?
Yeah.
So thanks to John Lewis of Evolution St. Louis for joining me today, and I hope everything goes well for you guys.
Thank you. We're happy to be here.
Absolutely. Folks, on a side note, I would like to say congratulations to the St. Louis Blues organization and their continued success in their march toward the Stanley Cup. Good luck against the Boston Bruins in the finals. Go Blues. And as always, you can see this and other episodes of Development STL right here on STL TV. I want to say thank you to the production staff and everybody behind the scenes here at STL TV, Andre Holman and his whole crew here. Thank you guys for putting up with me, that's for sure. And thank you again for watching Development STL right here on STL TV. I am your host, John Parker. See you next time.